Egyptian army encampment outside Kadesh, 1274 BCE. The bloodied chariot officer throws himself at the pharaoh's feet, begging forgiveness. They had been following his orders, trying to join the pharaoh's forces when the Hittites crushed them with their heavy chariots. Only a few had escaped. Now the Hittites were about to make it to this camp, not coming from the east, the way the Egyptian troops are facing, but from the west. The pharaoh looks up, seeing the plumes of dust from a line of chariots charging into their rearguard. Hittites dismount to sack the camp, looting the army's treasure. So the king swings aboard his chariot and orders it toward the action, shouting for his personal guard to engage the enemy. His chariot barreling toward the Hittites, horses throwing manes. Knocking an arrow, he fires a shot that buries itself in an enemy throat. His second glances off a helmet with a clang, while javelins slash past him. Ramesses the Great, beloved of the gods, has gone to war. This episode was made possible by the fine folks over at Total War Pharaoh, a phenomenal new entry into the Total War franchise that ties in with today's historical tale. Available for pre-order now at the link below. In all of Egyptian history, only one pharaoh is called the Great, and that man, Ramses II, certainly earned that title. He'd reign longer than any other Egyptian head of state, even up to the modern day, and oversee what's possibly the most ambitious building plan in the ancient world. His legacy makes him one of the few ancient rulers to still be a household name, and until the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb, he was the best-known pharaoh. Yet his family were not originally royals. His grandfather, Ramses I, had served as an administrative vizier to the childless pharaoh Horemheb, who chose Ramses as his successor. However, Ramses I was already old when he ascended to form the 19th dynasty, and his son and heir died at 40 of an unknown medical condition, meaning that Ramses II gained the throne at about 24 years of age. Despite that, he had been adequately prepared. He'd been only 11 when his grandfather took the throne, and been raised as a potential ruler of Egypt's new kingdom. His education focused heavily on military studies, both learning the tactics of Egyptian combat and the personal arts of war, fighting from a chariot with a bow. However, his greatest preparation for rule was actually his marriage to his first great royal wife, Nefertari. Highly educated and intelligent, she would be his partner in every imaginable way. In the personal realm, the two had a genuine affection for one another, as attested by Ramses' insistence on putting her into official artwork. Religiously, she participated in several important rituals, and politically, she served as a chief diplomat, corresponding with several other rulers throughout her husband's reign. But when Ramses II ascended to the throne, his chief concern was not that of diplomacy, but war. During the reign of the heretic pharaoh Akhenaten, who you can see our episode about here, Egypt's control over the periphery had slipped, and re-establishing that control had been a major project of Ramses I. He had pushed the bounds of the empire up into Canaan and to the city of Kadesh, in what is now Syria, wresting territory away from the Hittite Empire based in Anatolia. Now, Kadesh was the greatest prize in the region, mind you, which in the past had flipped from Hittite control to Egyptian and then back to Hittite. So, upon his ascension, Ramses II knew that the most pressing issue was to reaffirm Egyptian control of Canaan, which at this point had slipped. He began with a quick, easy victory over the Shurden pirates, who had been raiding the Egyptian coast. Now, who these Shurden are remains a bit of a mystery, but they're an ethnic group believed to be an early wave of the Sea Peoples, who would later bedevil the ancient world during the Bronze Age collapse. Ooh, look at that, another oldie but goodie. Ramses crushed the Shurden, but rather than destroying them, he instead enlisted them into his expanded and reorganized army, an army that had but one goal: Kadesh. His first expansion pushed northward through Canaan, crushing Nubian revolts and securing territory, but not going for the city directly. Yet when he heard that the Hittite king, Muwatalli II, had marshaled a force to oppose this aggression, he came to take command of the army personally. It was time to take the city, and he hit a stroke of luck. His scouts captured 2 Canaanites who were serving in the Hittite army, who told him said army was north, 100 kilometers away, meaning the city was undefended. Excited, Ramses sent his divisions out to look for the main Hittite force and moved his personal contingent toward the city and right into an ambush. For that stroke of luck had been a false one. The Canaanite captives were spies who'd fed him disinformation. New captives revealed that Muwatalli and his army were actually hidden just behind Kadesh across the river. Ramses barely had time to dispatch riders to his scattered forces when several of his charioteers came from the south to tell him that their division had been annihilated. And that's when the Hittite cavalry struck his rear, and Ramses threw his personal guard and himself directly into the fight. The Hittite chariots had made their mark, destroying the rear guard and looting the Egyptian camp. But Ramses' personal guard slammed into them, pinning them in places as the king and his charioteers hit their flanks and broke them. Now, the Hittite chariots, already heavier than the light, nimble Egyptian ones, did try to run, but they were loaded down with loot, and the long-range fire of the pursuing Egyptians destroyed them. Yet there was no time to celebrate. The rest of the Hittite army, and King Muwatalli himself, attacked Ramses' stricken force. The battle swung back and forth, as first the Egyptians, then Hittites, threw newly arrived reinforcements into the battle line. Swarms of chariots attacked each other, the Hittites with their three-man crews throwing javelins and trampling infantry, as the light Egyptian vehicles wheeled and darted, harassing both infantry and charioteers with storms of arrows. And at the climax, the Shurden mercenaries smashed into the Hittites and encircled them against the river. Never before and never again would there be a battle involving so many chariots. Though estimates vary, at least 4,500 vehicles dueled on the plains of Kadesh, and Ramses II was in the center of it all. Later depictions would show him striding amongst the Hittites like a god, smiting them down, superhumanly tall and powerful. And though filled with propaganda about Ramses' personal valor, historians do generally believe the Egyptian account of the engagement to be accurate, making it the first battle in history where we know what occurred. Yet there was no victory to be found. Though the Hittites would break, the battle was essentially an inconclusive draw. And while the Hittite army broke and retreated, Ramses didn't even attempt to take the city. His forces were too badly mauled, and he had no logistical capacity for a long siege. So he went south and just declared victory, because apparently that's just a thing you can do. Though Ramses had lost the campaign, and his lands in Canaan would shrink despite some minor victories, he portrayed the clash as a victory in official poems and temple carvings. The plain truth is he was defeated. However, the elaborate truth is that clever diplomacy can turn a lost war into a victory. 15 years after Kadesh, Ramses and Muwatalli's successor signed a peace treaty. The original was inscribed on a silver tablet, now lost, but copies exist in both the Hittite language and Egyptian hieroglyphics. Of course, international treaties had existed before, but this is the earliest to survive in written form, and in many ways was extremely modern. It established that neither of the powers would attack one another, and that good relations be maintained. But it went even further by establishing a mutual defense pact. Should either party be attacked, the other would come to its aid, a hint at the changing politics of the region. Both Egypt and the Hittite Empire had been diminished by Kadesh and the combat afterward, and both worried less about one another these days and more about the rising Assyrian Empire that threatened both. And really, let's just stop and think about the level of administration hammering this out would have taken in the ancient world. Ambassadors, letters, messengers, translators to ensure both copies meant the same thing. It's no wonder that this treaty is considered such a landmark that an enlarged copy is displayed on the walls of the United Nations headquarters. Now that is how successful Ramses was at winning the peace. And with foreign relations secure, he could now focus on his greatest project, building. For Ramses II would leave a legacy of temple and tomb construction that remains visible today and reigned for an unheard of length of time, where some subjects born during that period would live their entire lifespans under his rule. It made Ramses seem like what he increasingly came to be known as, a living god. A man who lived so long that he appeared immortal, who raised great monuments, and had around 50 sons. But as we'll talk about next week, when you have that many sons, who do you think is going to succeed you? And if a question like that interests you, I'm pretty sure you're going to love determining the next ruler of Bronze Age Egypt in the epic new game, Total War Pharaoh, who made this episode possible. Total War Pharaoh is just the ultimate Bronze Age strategy game where you can not only explore ancient Egypt during its last golden age, rendered in just incredible historical detail, mind you, but where you can also forge your own path and try to stand against the Bronze Age collapse. The single-player sandbox campaign is just absolutely massive and allows you to take control of 8 different faction leaders spanning a variety of rich cultures of the period, but that also offer their own unique play styles. For instance, you could become a fierce warrior or brilliant tactician, and then lead massive armies into epic real-time battles, or you could use grand strategy to conquer and manage an ever-evolving economy, and boost your own political standing in the courts to defend the rich lands of Egypt, Canaan, and Anatolia. But really, one of my absolute favorite tactical elements in this game is that you have to be prepared for unexpected things like intense changes in weather that can directly impact your, or your enemies', chances of survival on the battlefield, and utilize their dynamic fire system to engulf armies and spread destruction through forests and settlements. Seriously, there's just a ton at play here, and it's just super fun to strategize how to use it all to your advantage. So, if you would like to join me in proving that you have what it takes to become the greatest pharaoh in history and forge an empire of the ages, just click that link below to your favorite digital marketplace of choice to pre-order Total War Pharaoh. That way, you're ready to play the moment it releases on Wednesday, October 11th. See you on the battlefield. Well, if it isn't Ahmed Ziad Turk, Angelo Valenciana, Arcalite Games, Casey Muscha, Dominic Valenciana, Izzy Coin, Joseph Blame, Guya Coy, and Skylar Holmes. Thanks for being legendary patrons, y'all.